Well, a warm hello to my lovely viewers and subscribers. Today's video might be a little bit different. So, normally I do a book review. Today, I must be honest, I think it's going to be closer to a critique. So, the book I have in mind today, I actually just read the book in about one day here, and it's God Does His Best Work with Empty by Nancy Guthrie. And I haven't read anything else by her before, but I think I bought this book because I was looking into a couple of counseling books and I was intrigued by the title. I think I was very interested in this, right? So, going through a period of heartbreak and then, of course, being humbled by the Lord, that leaves you in a period of empty. And just last night, I was taking a read through like the intro and I was intrigued. I was like, ooh, this sounds like a good book. Because Nancy Guthrie, it mentioned that she holds like a retreat for parents who have lost their children. So I was quite interested in what she had to say, right? Because I thought, you have, the practical and real life experience to add to this topic right here. But what I found, unfortunately, was it was a bit broad. So if you look at this book, it's actually quite the easy read, just about 200 or so pages, but these pages are very small, very quick. And what I found was that she did refer to a lot of biblical stories. So she did want to help those who were feeling empty, those who were feeling unfulfilled, those who were searching for fulfillment in areas where God might not necessarily give it. So she uses this example of like Ruth, the story of Naomi, so how their family uproots themselves from Bethlehem, they go to Moab, and then unfortunately tragedy strikes in Moab, right? So, Naomi's husband dies, her two sons die, and all she's left with is just Ruth and Oprah. So there's already like hints of like, they weren't exactly aligning themselves to where God would bless them. So eventually when they come back to Bethlehem, that's because they hear that God has blessed Bethlehem. And what I found with this book was that she does refer to a lot of biblical stories. So she does use the story of Ruth, use the story of Abraham, also of Mephibosheth, the woman at the well, a lot of stories. But the problem is that it wasn't very deep. Like, I think she would have benefited more from using maybe less stories, but a deeper analysis with more truths to draw out from them and really apply them. Because here, this is a relevant topic. God does his best work with empty. I'm sure many Christians feel this at times where, they're humbled, they feel like their expectations aren't quite right. She does mention that. She references Ecclesiastes, and she makes a good point there that maybe our perspective is not quite right. Maybe we're looking for fulfillment in areas where God won't necessarily grant it. But what I found was that she just referenced a lot of stories, and then the point she drew, there were some good insights, but nothing that was like a wow moment, right? Something that really says, oh, like this is how I should apply it. But generally speaking, yes, I agree. I agree with your insights and what you've drawn out of it. But the problem is, I think, as any Christian who reads his Bible, knows their Bible, it's, I know this is the biblical reality. The reason why I picked up this book is because I want the true, maybe not true, but, the everyday reality as well. How does that biblical reality that I've read, how does that apply to my situation? And I was hoping that, with her experience, right, all these retreats for parents who've lost their children, I'm sure she must have had conversations with these parents, right? And that in itself is valuable. How in the world does one comfort someone who has, a parent who has lost their child? How do you help them grieve through that process? How do you help them even process that? I was hoping to hear some of that, but a lot of this book was just, here are some biblical stories. Here's how they're, a bit empty or not the most fulfilled, and then, the principle. But I found that wasn't the most helpful. So this is a book review where can't say it's like a book I fully recommend. I'm sort of giving what I think what could have been better, and really, what I'm saying is, I think some real life examples would have been helpful. Like I'm sure you don't want to expose like names and whatnot, but hearing about certain cases, right? I'm sure there's cases of either a child suddenly passing away. It might be a little bit more of a terminal case, right, where you're expecting a child to pass away and then they finally do. Other situations that leave you humbled and empty and grieving. How do you counsel people like this? I think that was my hope of getting through this book. But to my, disappointment is a strong word, but I was a little let down when I finished the book, and chapter after chapter I was sort of like, it's not quite what I'm looking for. I wish there was more from it. So it did leave me a little bit of angst too. I'm like 190 pages and I felt like I haven't profited very much from it. But I think a lot of these counseling books, they do benefit from that real life examples. And also, how do you come alongside someone who's in those situations? So for her, she could have written, either perspective, right? Either her helping someone walk through that process, or even for herself. I think in the introduction, she mentions that, I believe it's two of her children actually passed away at a young age due to some specific disorder. So she also knows that pain as well. She knows what it's like to be empty, to be humbled, and to feel like God is almost against her. That's the point she makes in the Naomi and the Ruth story. Naomi, it feels like, from her perspective at least, feels like God is totally against her. And that was a great point to make. And I think what you want to do is, how do you help someone who feels like God is against them? That was what I was hoping to hear, and especially in those harder cases, right? Naomi, she lost her husband, lost her 2 son-in-laws. She's now a widow. She's in a perilous and terrible situation. Likewise, today, there's people who lose family members and they're in a terrible situation. They're in despair. How do you help them? And it's not that I'm saying that the biblical reality isn't enough, but if we are going to draw from Bible stories, it has to be deep and really, really point to Christ's greatness. Not so much to just, the person made it through with God's help in some way here. So I may be oversimplifying a little bit, but I just had such high hopes for this book. So here I am trying to vent a little bit too. But it was a very fast read. So I don't remember how much I got it for, but it was a quick read. I'm not sure it's the most helpful read. That's my honest opinion. So yeah, that's what I can say honestly. So if you're considering this book, I think there might be some better works out there. I think Puritan works might plummet a little deeper. It might give you richer truths and application. This one I felt was just a little bit lacking overall, but just so much potential. I think real life stories and application would have been so helpful to this case. And really seeing people come out of those situations too. In the Bible we see it, of course. But I think the question we wonder is, do we see that today too? How do we see someone who's in the pits of despair get restored? How do they come out of it? Is there even a way for them to come out of it? And the answer for every Christian is hopefully yes. There's always hope in Christ. But that process, that's how we wonder, right? How do you get from the pits of despair back into as good as normal can be? So that's my quick rant. Not sure it makes for a great video, to be honest, but if you watched the whole thing, thank you. Appreciate you. And I'll see you in the next one. I think what I realized is if I'm not reading the Puritans, I actually get through books quite quickly. So stay tuned. There might be some more book reviews. Grace to you all and peace.